Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Unpacking the Backpack, where we're going to talk about the pitfalls of PD. Now, before I begin, I just got the flu for the second time. I really don't know how you get the flu twice, let alone when you had the shot in the fall like me, but I'm only telling you this in case I have to keep clearing my throat because if you've been along on my podcast journey, you know that number one, this is raw, unfiltered. I don't edit because, quite honestly, I don't got the time. And if the message is good enough, you're not going to really care. So that's that. And I used to leverage AI to take old blog posts and convert it into a podcast. And I soured on that because the transcript was just not as detailed as I needed it to be. And I also wanted to add some more length to these podcasts episodes, thanks to some feedback from trusted colleagues across the country. So let's dive into professional development. But before we do, there are countless ways to grow and improve. At the individual level, intrinsic motivation drives many educators to actively seek opportunities that support the diverse learning interests and needs. That, by the way, is how I got to where I am today. Moving from principal to coach, consultant, keynoter, it really was that little blue bird way back in 2009 that got me to rethink many things in my career, but one of which was learning. So, social media has played a considerable role in learning at the individual level over the years, which has demonstrated the power of personal learning networks, or PLNs, with anytime, anywhere, with anyone learning. Speaking from experience, I've significantly benefited from not only engaging in digital spaces, but taking what I've learned and applying it to my practice, which I can readily show when asked or communicate through my blog. Being a lifelong learner in the digital age is pretty empowering. And that's going to help us make the distinction between professional development and professional learning. But with personal learning networks, anywhere, anytime, anyone, you can get resources, test out ideas. You can engage in conversations. You can pose questions. And the best part is it's personalized. So you can choose the right tool for the right task, whether it's Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Pinterest, which I still love. So there's so many different avenues. And, one of my favorites is Flipboard, which is an app that I have on my phone that really creates your own personalized magazine. You put the topics in, and then Flipboard mines the web for personalized content based on your interests. So while PLNs have grown in popularity, the most popular form of professional learning embraced by schools and districts still consists of more traditional pathways, such as bringing guest speakers, workshops, or holding annual events. The investment in these options makes sense as variables such as time and cost can be absorbed through various funding sources, while ensuring the entire staff receives the training. The professional development day that are built into our calendars. So these PD days, mostly packed into the beginning of the academic year, are still the preferred mode to support staff while adhering to specific mandates. Here's the thing. Everyone should be asking, do these current pathways actually lead to changes in practice at scale? Another question, do you and your people actually get excited about PD days and be like, I cannot wait for this PD day in August, September. It's going to jumpstart my practice. It's going to make me a better educator. said very few actual educators. So, I've written over and over in the past about the need to move away from professional development to professional learning. Quite frankly, PD is something that's often done to us. It's not something that we want to do. It's not driven by intrinsic motivation. And even though there might be choice, there's still kind of a lot of stipulations on the focus areas. When we think about moving from PD to professional learning, any investment should lead to efficacy. And as we talk about pitfalls, we're going to talk about some of the things that really, when we think about learning, PD is the exact opposite. But we want any investment to grow, to improve, to help us achieve the desired goals that we've set forth. That is what I mean by efficacy. While mandate-focused trainings do very little to inspire the masses, one and done and drive-by events likewise do very little to provide educators with strategies to effectively implement the ideas or show what they look like in practice. Those are probably, besides the calendar and the infrequency of PD days, the other major pitfalls are one and done, drive by. So inspiration, packed into one day typically fades when reality sets in shortly after. Think about how many conferences or PD days you've gone to, and maybe you've had a really exceptional speaker that's got you all fired up, all excited. Well, are you still feeling that same excitement? Are you still fired up in November, January, April? Or does the reality of the position set in? Now, here's the thing, everybody. Motivation does matter. And I'm all for keynote speakers or conference-like events as long as there is an underlying plan to ensure educators, teachers, administrators, coaches, support staff get what they need to succeed throughout the year. This is what leads to change, not a single person or stand-alone PD day. And here's the thing, everybody. I'm not looking for agreement per se, but what I want you to really reflect on is, and maybe there are some shining examples, but I want you to think about all the PD that you have gone to or has been enforced on you, and I want you to think about what evidence do you have that it's made you a better educator. Efficacy is about showing the impact of investments made in professional learning. It can be broken down into two different categories: planning and implementation. To set the stage for efficacy and to avoid the pitfalls of PD, we need to be cognizant of the rationale for why a particular initiative or strategy or tool is being invested in and how it will benefit learners through improved outcomes. So when we think about the planning piece, a solid professional learning plan has these three elements. Number one, it's research aligned. And I'm talking about peer-reviewed research. Number two, it is ongoing. Number three, it's job embedded. Why is job embedded important? Because of time, everybody. We can't be pulling people out, and we know those couple days in the beginning of the year don't lead to results at scale. Now, a plan is only as good as its implementation. In digital leadership, I, really fleshed out a strategic planning process that can help set the stage for impactful professional learning. And it really is about these guiding questions. Where are we? Where do we want to go? How will we get there? How do we know we've gotten there? And then how do we know we've improved? And as we think about these essential elements, looking at vision, goals, looking at how we're going to collect evidence, reflection to ensure that the results that we've gotten those results. So the challenge and the opportunity when planning is to make it happen. This is where effective implementation comes in. Now, I want you to think about the pitfalls of PD. We do these days. But is there follow-up? How are we determining if those practices took hold? So an effective implementation relies on the following 3 things. Number 1, continuous feedback. Feedback that is practical, timely, specific. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. Number 2, there's accountability for growth. And number 3, there is clear evidence of impact. Again, one and done, drive-by, motivational speakers, great. But if that's just where the plan, if that's all the plan is, what is that implementation going to look like? Coaching is a critical component as it provides continual support for teachers and administrators while addressing all the essential planning and implementation components. The key is to remember that coaching alone will not lead to sustainable and scalable change. That requires each school or district to build in their own feedback and accountability measures while curating evidence to show impact over time in relation to improved learner outcomes, both qualitative and quantitative. Recently I've been involved in several ongoing projects where districts have not only made the pertinent investments, but have also integrated the planning and implementation components. And, I remember one particular implementation, it started with working with leaders over the summer on disruptive thinking in our classrooms. And we built in a lot of workshops that were very interactive, talked about moving from the why to the how to the what. And then over the course of the year, I visited multiple times in the role of a coach, following the PD to provide the ongoing and job-embedded feedback to show efficacy. And it was amazing because we saw so many incredible examples of innovative practices at scale. And as we were visiting classrooms, we were able to see that direct evidence of how, in this case, the leadership team took personalized learning strategies that were shared not only in the book Disruptive Thinking, but also in the workshops, how they took this information from the summer, formulated a plan, and began implementing the strategies with fidelity. It was great seeing differentiated rotations where there was clear tasks aligned to standards, students being grouped using adaptive tool data, timers being set so kids could self-regulate, work at their own pace. And the best part was watching that targeted instruction from the teacher based on need. We also began to see playlists where the teacher established a set amount of tasks. Students were able to choose the order. They could work on those tasks at their own pace. But then, while the students were working, the teacher was pulling those students for intensive support. That's tier 3, everybody. When I talked about the rotations before, that's tier 2. So think about how we connect it to RTI, MTSS models. I saw another great example where a teacher came up with a snazzy acronym for her rotations. For math, meet with teacher, at my seat, technology, hands-on, timer, rotations, groupings, but she also included weekly videos that were carried over from the pandemic. Videos that were already recorded, they were spliced, that had the main concept. Think about it as mini lessons that students could access at any time. And, I can go on and on. Then in another implementation, I facilitated a district-wide workshop on personalized learning. And this again was followed up by job-embedded coaching and targeted sessions. And, as I came back to visit multiple times and provide feedback, there was so much growth. And every implementation, we can kind of see where we were at the beginning, what the progression looks like, and then ultimately where a system wants to be based on their goals. That's professional learning. And, in this particular project, I really loved their take on the must do and may do. Mustard, ketchup, mayo, all the tasks embedded into into Canvas, hyperlinks for embedded practice where students can work at their own pace. In the Mayo activities, you're looking at breakout EDU, more challenging, more relevant tasks. And, I got pictures and artifacts of all of this. So we can look at the level of thinking. We can look at the relevance. We can look at the purposeful use of tech, the connection to learning targets. So, as I shared those examples, the key tenet here was focus on planning, focus on implementation, align it to current mission, vision, and goals. Because with professional learning, people don't want another thing they have to do. They don't want a fad. They don't want a trend. They want to know how is it going to help them maximize the time and do what they're already doing better. It is essential to understand the underlying principles of effective professional learning so we can avoid the pitfalls of PD. So whether you're a teacher or administrator, you must advocate for supports that will help you succeed. I always advise schools and districts to poll their staff and then develop a comprehensive plan that will lead to efficacy, either internally or with external help. An outside lens can overcome internal bias and provide an honest assessment of where you truly are while guiding you to your desired destination. No matter the path chosen, the key is to get it right for your people. So, as I kind of leave you all on this episode of Unpacking the Backpack, I just want you to kind of think about, from your role and your lens, how does PD help you do what you do better? What evidence do you have to show that the concepts are embedded consistently and with continuity? And more importantly is, what can be done to improve the current structures you already have in place? And I mentioned, two of my books today, Disruptive Thinking in Our Classrooms and Digital Leadership. I got PD components. I'm sorry, my mistake. This is why I don't correct myself. I don't want to go back and edit this. I have sections in both those books about effective professional learning, not PD. So if you're interested, check those books out on Amazon. And like always, everybody, keep making a difference in the lives of kids. Your work truly matters.